Alrighty, it is on the half hour, so we're going to go ahead and get started. So, good morning, everyone. My name is Keaton Andersen. I am an engineering manager here with Aero Electronics. I'm the lead engineer associated with the US version of the Aero certification program. So I'm really excited to get a chance to be a part of this fireside chat today. With me is Paulo Bertolino, who is our lead engineer out of Europe, covering the Aero certification program. And then one of our great success stories, Juan Pablo Viera, the CTO from an Unlimited eBike there in Spain. So Juan Pablo, can I have you go ahead and do an introduction?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Keaton. Good morning, everyone, or good night for those of you in the US early. My name is Juan Pablo. I'm the CTO at Unlimited, and what Unlimited does is electric powertrains for light vehicles. It's basically propulsing electric vehicles such as skateboards and bikes, and in the future, who knows what lots more stuff.
Perfect, thank you. And then Paulo, can you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Paulo Bertolino. I'm a part of the Engineering Solutions Center in Budapest, Hungary. I'm the application engineer responsible for the Aero certification program in Europe. And also I'm running more activities like the engineer services in our Aero Plus platform. It's great to be here, guys.
Really appreciate it. Thank you, Paulo. So just a few housekeeping notes before we get going too far. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with a little bit of a fireside chat between Paulo, Juan, and myself. Just kind of talk a little bit about what has gone on with Unlimited eBike, their product, and some of the things that go into the Aero certification program. There's a little button at the bottom to be able to ask questions. So we're going to finish with an AMA. I'm going to jump to some of the questions at the end, but just be aware I'm not ignoring it. We'll just kind of handle some of the conversation, go through a little bit of the presentation, and then we'll come back to those questions. And then our goal is to try to have more of an open and positive conversation. So we kind of just want you to really focus on asking some good and innovative questions. We'll ignore anything that's going to get a little bit too out of line. So please use this as a positive environment. We're really excited to get to be a part of this today. So the first question I'm going to jump to is actually going to be for you, Juan Pablo. I kind of want to know, can you tell me a little bit about how you came up with this idea? How is it that you guys exactly wanted to get started with this project?
Well, we didn't start with the e-bike. Actually, we started 5 years ago with a similar concept. We made a conversion kit for skateboards. So one of our founders, Carlos, was living at San Francisco, and he had his very long commute from the city to Palo Alto, where he worked. He had to either walk or ride a bike or something to the train station, then take the train, and then from the train station, go to his office. So it was like the classical last mile problem, which is impacting everyone in dense cities today. And at the time, there were no scooters around. The micromobility wasn't a thing, you know. So at the time, we were still in contact because we went to school together. So we were still in contact. I was living in Valencia, Spain, and we said like, yeah, let's make a prototype of a skateboard just for us, you know, just to have fun. You use it in Spain, I use it in San Francisco, and let's try it out. And as soon as we did, we really got into it. Like it changed completely our daily lives. Suddenly going to a grocery stop or running errands was actually really fun. You wanted to get outside of your house to do stuff. Moving around the city was super fast, much faster than public transit, or much faster than any other service. And you're on the way, you're having fun, right? So it was like immediately we understood the value in it, and we said, if this is the case for us, how many people are there out there, you know, that are gonna value this? So what we did to prove that thesis was a first crowdfunding campaign at the time, which we combined between two platforms. At the end, we used Indiegogo for that campaign, and it went really well. Between the two platforms, we raised about $500K, and then from there, we continued we saw it was a reality, and then we said, we have to do this for real. Like, we quit our jobs, we founded the company, and we started trying to make a business out of it. So it started really as a prototype and as something that we really didn't think about too much in the business side. And now through the years, we've been learning how to approach the customer and how to make it a scalable operation and an actual business. So in that process, we continued developing our electronics and our core technology, which now transcends any vehicle, and it's more of a powertrain that can be applied to different vehicles, but it's not specifically one vehicle. And now we launched our second product in this campaign, which we are referring here to, which is the powertrain or the conversion kit for any bike, to convert any bike to electric. So that's how we thought about it, the whole process.
That's wonderful. And I think I can echo with a lot of people that when we work with a lot of campaigners, some of the fun part of this is when we get to see these ideas that there's something that kind of just normally started, they had an idea and it became more fun and it started to become this, I don't even want to do my normal job. I want to start to work more and more on this. So I'm going to have you go.
Exactly.
I'd like to do a product demo in just a second, but Paulo, I'm going to jump to you. Can you talk a little bit just about what it's been like engaging with Juan Pablo and just kind of where you kind of jumped into the process here?
Yeah, absolutely. It was really, at the end of the day, Unlimited bike is that we know the customer, we know what they were doing in the past, and most importantly, we know they have these skills. They run a second like a campaign on the Indiegogo platform. That makes us more confident, how we can move along different aspects in their campaign, because we knew they have the capabilities of a marketing team. We knew they were like running fine. And if I'm not wrong, Juan Pablo, I think the first time we talked, it was like really in the first wave of COVID. It was really the time when manufacturing process was really a big thing for many like startups across the globe, actually. It was so nice because we managed to find one manufacturing house for them really almost 20 minutes away from you, Juan Pablo. If I'm not wrong, it's really easy for you to go there and manage the situation. I believe that's the core element from Aero certification program. We can understand different type of startups, where they are and how we can solve the problem. Because they already have experience, they have the engineering skills in house. Is how we can manage and support them to have something scalable in the future. And for us to manage to have this manufacturing house in Spain really close to them, speak the same language. So, it's a win-win scenario, I would say.
Definitely. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And one thing I did want to touch on with that, and Juan Pablo, I'll toss this back to you. So when you were kind of mentioning it, you were talking a little bit about some of the environment that this was being developed in and just some of the challenges that you might have faced. So can I get you to talk a little bit about the product and then maybe a little bit of some of the early challenges that you might have faced in developing it?
Sure. So let's talk about the product first. I mentioned before, we do powertrain. So what is powertrain? For in the mind of a customer that doesn't maybe know in engineering or whatever, many of our customers actually, people understand batteries, right? Batteries is where you store energy. So in our case, we have this battery that we have outside in the market right now, which is the skateboard battery. And this has evolved to our current battery, which is this one, which is the smaller version of the e-bike battery. And now we have this bigger version of the e-bike battery. So that's where we store the energy, right? And after you have the energy storage, you need a way to convert it to motion. So in the case of the skateboard, we have a motor inside the wheel. So the wheel is the motor. And in the case of the bicycle here, this is a rear motor. So this is not having the wheel. So, but it's the same, right? So the motor is vehicle specific, but the battery doesn't have to be, because in the end, we're moving a person, right? In any vehicle, the total energy that we're using is about the same. So this is one of the things that we thought early on, like, why do we have all this different hardware and different software and different things running, like solving for the same problem, really, which is moving people? Yeah, you need to have a different motor, and maybe you need to have a different user interface, right? In the skateboard, we have a remote controller that you operate with your hand, and it is Bluetooth connected. In the bicycle, because of the regulations, it needs to detect your pedaling motion. So we came up with this very innovative pedal sensor that you just install in minutes on your crank, right? So basically, in the end, you install this energy conversion like kit onto a vehicle, right? So you can do this with a skateboard. So here are the batteries and the motors, and then this skateboard is electric, or you can do that with the bike. You have the motor there, and the motor is mounted inside of the front wheel, in this case, and then you have the batteries there. And of course, we have different options depending on the use case, different battery sizes, different power levels, and all that related also to pricing. And so it adapts to each customer needs, because some people are willing to spend more and go further or faster. Some people want the lightness and the most minimalistic setup. So That is basically what the product is. But
Perfect.
in the core, the product is actually vehicle agnostic. The core of the product is this, which is our electronics, and then some batteries, and then some motors. But the electronics that go inside of here and inside of the human interfaces, right?
Definitely. I think that's super cool. And that was one of the things I did like a lot about the product was the ability that you can be able to work with anything, a lot of times when we do see some of our products that come in that we're working with, it's a very specific or things become more proprietary. You see a lot of what's happening with things like cell phone providers where some companies are moving more and more towards their own connectors, their own setup, and you have to buy into that ecosystem if you want to be able to really be a part of it. And it's really cool to be able to have a product that is focused around everyone, that you can be able to support everybody, that you can get them involved. So I think that's excellent. And Juan Pablo, we did have a question that came in. Can you share a little bit about just what your skill areas are? Some people were wondering, are you an engineer or technical, or what's your background a little bit on that?
Yeah, sure. I'm a mechanical engineer. I'm a racing fanatic, so for a lot of time I was thinking about racing in engineering. I participated in Formula SAE, which in the United States is Formula SAE, but in Europe it's Formula Student. So that's been a long part of my professional formation. I recommend that to any student out there. It's the best way to learn by doing. And then I did a PhD in propulsion systems, right? So moving things. It was specifically in combustion engines, and I was very specific about fuel sprays, which sprays can be applied even into airplanes. But basically, that's where I saw what the automotive industry is and where research was going. And I really that's one of the things that opened my eyes to really if I really want to make a difference, I cannot be doing this, which is very incremental gains, because it's very late in the development curve. I have to move to something that's more directly related to people's lives, And coincidentally, the story that I said before, coincidentally, we made this prototype, and I suddenly understood that something so simple could really impact my life and everyone's lives in a city, right? So I was very attracted to that. And I'm a mechanical engineer, so I started developing the motor, the battery, and everything else. But in the team, we have very, very strong electronics engineers. Some for hardware and some for firmware, and a lot of overlapping between them. And now we're expanding a little bit more onto software, because we have an app and we have a cloud service. We have remote diagnostics from the cloud to the vehicle. So all that is getting very complicated on the software side. So now we are expanding onto that side.
Yeah, definitely. And that is a point that I think is worth touching on a little bit. So obviously my background is a little bit more the engineering side. I've had a chance to work with a lot of campaigners, but Paulo, I'm actually going to have you talk a little bit to this. So one thing that I've noticed as kind of a trend within the industry is things that are starting to really become important as you're developing a startup, as you're coming up with a new product, is going ahead and thinking, forward in terms of, do we need an app? Are we going to be able to start to look more in that software realm? How do we start to connect? Everyone expects an app now. So Paulo, can you talk a little bit about some of the trends that you see from that front, and just in terms of, where electronics is kind of going, and what we kind of have seen, and why Unlimited eBike was smart to start in that realm?
Yeah, absolutely. We can see, as Juan Pablo said, about the complexity of connectivity as well. It's not just about power anymore. It's not just about pick and place a component. It's how we can really transmit the data and how we can make this secure. There's many aspects is being in trend, and actually it's going to be really more in the coming months. It's in the coming years. It's going to be, that's how the market's moving, especially 5G. IoT now really is going to be a reality, and that's why I really can see many startups deeping studying this type of products. That's really smart, because now we are going to have the proper infrastructure for people really send the data for different aspects. It's a lot of things. It can be connectivity, LTE, and so on. In this aspect, I really think Aero is the best solution for this type of startups, because we can navigate amazingly well with our suppliers network. As Juan Pablo said, really sometimes understanding the difficulties of a certain project, I think that's a crucial. If you don't have the skills for these type of activities, it's important for you to have a network who can help you to get in this aspect. And for that we have many ways. We have our we are the biggest distribution in the market, but not just this. Aero is an engineering solution services company, meaning we can help all the through way of a components point of view. We can assist the cost with the software part as well. Just for information, I'm part of the engineering solution center here in Budapest, Hungary, meaning we have more than 30 engineers in different countries like Hungary, Poland, UK, and Germany, just to assist our colleagues in the field. Meaning we are there to support them technically speaking, how we can get the project in a different level. And also, by having this extra support from the Engineering Solutions Center, plus our suppliers, I really think we are in a, let's say, a good spot to support our customers for them to escalate their production. I think that's important. We can get them moved. We can, if that's needed, we have suppliers like Analog Devices, one of the biggest players in the market. If you need whatever type of issues with, getting some, let's say, a Fitbit or whatever type of components, we can try to manage to get some, a specialist to support you to get in a different level.
Definitely. Yeah, and I think going into that, that product, things are starting to, when you look at production and getting lots of units and such, it's not super cheap. It can start to get really expensive. So Juan Pablo, I was kind of wondering if you could talk a little bit about why you guys decided to go into crowdfunding, and specifically why you decided to go with Indiegogo.
Yeah, that's a very good question. Just to add a little bit to what Paulo was saying just now, just before addressing that question directly, you asked before what was one of the biggest challenges that we face, right? And I didn't go to that exactly, but going related to what Paulo just said, one of the biggest challenges is when to make a prototype, it's kind of easy, you have to make it work and it's hard. But then from there to production and delivering to the final customers, it's a huge challenge, especially when you're doing it the first time, and we've experienced it ourselves. And this is where our Aero can really, really help. So I think, in short, the biggest challenge for us was to come from a blank slate, a drawing board, and thinking about something that we want to put in our customers' hands and actually making it something nice, delivered in a nice box that arrives and it's safe and it works in scale. Like, we have made 5,000 of these batteries here, and it was a huge challenge. So that's where Aero can really help. And now, directly to this question, when we had this previous experience from the skateboard, right, where we used the two platforms, and from there we used the Indiegogo platform as the second platform, and we used the on-demand tool, or I don't know how to call it, but like that functionality, which helped a lot just to keep the product there before we had like a fully working website, which can be its own challenge. And so that is a factor that I think is very important. And also, when we were doing our research for this campaign during COVID, which was kind of a strange time, basically what we did, and this is what we did, I don't know if it's like the correct answer, but this is what we did. We looked for other projects that were in our similar space, and then we did a bit of statistics or data analysis, which how many campaigns have there been, So in there, Indiegogo was like 55% of the campaign in that space. So it wasn't a big difference between Indiegogo and the other ones. But then if you go to total amount of money raised in those types of campaigns, Indiegogo was way higher. So for us, that is saying that the audience in Indiegogo, the curated audience that goes in there and just like sees the projects, it's much more to the type of project that we are launching. So that answers the question, why the platform? Now, why crowdfunding? That is a very good question for every startup out there trying to do something that is going to be in the hands of people. In our case, it is very related to two things. It helps a lot with cash flow, of course, because you get kind of pre-orders. So you can pay for tooling, you can pay for development, you can pay for a lot of things that are very expensive up front and that are risky. If you pay for tooling and you haven't proven that your product is going to be a little bit successful, then you might end up with something that you just wasted money. And that goes for plastics and this type of tooling, but also goes for electronics and setting up test jigs and setting stuff up for a production that may not sell, right? And also, it's a very good way to follow with this phrase that it's kind of famous in the startup world, which is test fast and fail fast, or something like that. Which basically is put it out there, let people tell you if the product is good and if they want it and how they want it. Maybe it's a good way to, you give them this, they tell you, oh yeah, it's cool, but what about this? And then when you actually launch the product, you can implement those changes because you haven't made it yet. So crowdfunding is very, very good in that sense. It's a lot of work to make a campaign, and it's a lot of work then communicating with these customers for a bit of time and making them understand that it is a kind of not Amazon, which ships in 2 days, but it's very productive, and it can be very, very productive for a company. So it really depends on each case and what the company is trying to accomplish. But for us, it has been really good, and this is why we did it this second time.
Yeah. No, I think that that's completely fair, and you do see that it's really common. I think that's a misconception that a lot of people who are going to start their own company don't necessarily understand, is that level of being able to raise product number one in terms of cost is such a big hurdle to overcome. So when you start to look at these, I'm doing thousands of units, you can start to be a little bit more flexible if you can get them up in that higher range, because your costs are going to be driven down. You're going to be able to, instead of just being able to develop for one unit, you're now looking at multiple units, and it lets you have a little bit of flexibility in that front. I'm not saying that building 5,000 units is cheaper than building one unit, obviously, but having the ability to then, when you're up and scaling, you're looking at being able to be a little bit more mobile when you're doing that. So I think that that's a really good point. And Paulo, I did want to jump to you real quick and talk a little bit about, so one thing that Juan Pablo had mentioned was talking a little bit about looking at other campaigns and kind of seeing where it's successful. So one thing I did kind of wanted to ask from you is, you've had an opportunity to work with a lot of campaigners, a lot of startups. Can you talk a little bit about what you've seen from success tips just from your end of working with campaigners?
Yeah, that's really that's a very good question, Keaton. Like as Juan, you can see for the background of Juan here, you can see he has a strong team working in the project development. It's like it's an integration between teams, different type of skills, and it's not just about engineer side here, like just put components and make these connectivities, but you have to also have a very strong like how you can attract people to be aware of your project, meaning how you can build up a community around your device. And having a very strong collaboration with your community, I would say, is a key element for whatever crowdfunding campaign, because there you can make, okay guys, I'm working this stage of the development right now, I'm expecting to have a certain outcome for this development. And then like increase like email lists, increase the communication with them. I believe most of the engineers, they are not so familiarized with marketing strategy, how they can pull out some marketing campaigns. And for that, as Aero, we can make some assessment. We can help the startups. Once they really get in this position, they're ready to launch the campaign. We can either send a newsletter from our customers, but Indiegogo has been really, especially the marketing team, they really been helpful from our startups. I believe when we have this call with Juan Pablo, and we have like many questions because it was the first wave of COVID, and we were, is it a good time for launch a campaign or not? It's a kind of, it's hard for you to have this matrix, because we cannot really say about our experience. And it turns out it was an interesting moment for, at least for the first wave. People, they were at home and they were like willing to see different and support different types of activities. And it was amazing because the startup marketing team, the Indiegogo marketing team were there, like really supporting us in this aspect. It's a full collaboration between different companies, different people with different skills. And if there is a device for the startups up there, really, if you have some issues, if you have some difficulties, reach out to us, and we can try to make this assessment. We can try to see how is the best way for you to get in a position to really go and launch our campaign, but most important, be successful. As Juan Pablo said, like, it's not a one shot. You just launch a campaign and see what's going to be outcome for that. I think there's a process, and if you this process really well done, you create a community. You have a engineering marketing, you have a engineering and marketing working together. This ideal situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think something that you hit on there is interesting. So we've had a lot of campaigners that they come through and they have a great idea. They go, they raise a ton of money on Indiegogo, right? And then they come to us and they say like, hey, I don't actually know how to go any further with this. And it's they may not have all the expertise on their team. So Juan Pablo, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit. So in that regard, you raise a bunch of money. You guys, you had a successful campaign. What does that next step look like? What happens when you get done? How'd you guys tackle that?
That's a good question, and that really goes related to our way of bringing a product to market. So, like I said, we really believe in crowdfunding. We did it the first time, so this time we did it just better, and not the campaign itself, but like the whole process. So, when you develop a product, or when we develop the product, we start thinking about it, in a like abstract way. Like, what are the customers going to do with it? What are the customers expecting of the product, and how are they going to use it, and all that, without anything built yet. And then you say, okay, the product is going to be this, and you build what it's called sometimes an engineering validation version, or something that may not look like the product but works, and you have to make sure that works. In our case, a big part of the testing before the campaign was for the pedal sensor, because this is a very innovative device. It doesn't exist, and it has never been done this way before, and we had to prove that it was going to work. This is going to be a differentiator in the market for us. But engineering-wise, we have to solve this challenge, and detecting pedaling from like a gyroscope, it's not that hard, not that easy. Sorry. So once we validated that and we arrive at prototypes that work, then we have to make something that sells, right? Like Paulo was saying, how are we going to bring customers to like this and pay us upfront 6 months in advance just because they think it's cool? So they have to believe in the product, but they also have to believe in the team. You have to be good at communicating the message and all that. And then you have hopefully a successful campaign. And then for us, at that point, we might have some things in advance, like tooling or something, depending on the cash flow or whatever, we might have some things in advance. But until the campaign is over, you don't really commit to a production, right? That's what you're doing there. So after the campaign is over, it could be a good way to show some investors that there's a market out there, and maybe you motivate some investors to put in some cash, and you can make a bigger production, which is better for lowering costs. It is better for the suppliers paying attention to you. So from that production, you can deliver to your crowdfunders, but then you can go to market to sell. So that could be the case. You start actually designing for manufacturing. So the prototype that is on the back that I showed wasn't actually possible to make from injection molding, for example. So you have to make changes. Maybe in those changes, you realize some stuff and you make improvements. We did reduce the height of the battery pack by 10 millimeters from the crowdfunding version to the production version, because after we built those prototypes, we learned. So we thought about some stuff, moved things around, and made a lot of changes, validated those changes. So after the crowdfunding, you kind of get started to the actual production process, which is designing for manufacturing. Hopefully your design is validated already, and you're not solving problems of reliability and stuff like that. It could be the case, depending on where you're at. But in our case, the design was already validated, and it was more actually getting it done. So definitely designing the molds, designing the electronics for mass production, designing everything, like sourcing, finding suppliers. We have relationships with a lot of suppliers from our skateboard project, but as Paulo was saying, we were trying to bring production back to Europe. So we're developing new relationships, and developing a supplier takes time. And that's something, if you haven't done before, that you can sub-estimate, like, yeah, that's gonna be easy, 2 emails, and then you're spending 3 months talking to these guys 5 times a week, just because there are so much details. So then, after you have all these suppliers set up, you place the orders, you go through production, you have your validation, your testing, whatever you do to control your quality, you ship. And for shipping, you have to comply to regulations. You have to put a manual. So you have to think about a product manual, which is graphic design and a lot of different things that go outside of engineering, but come into a final product. So after the crowdfunding campaign, it's where it gets really real. you have the customers, but you have to deliver, and that's really hard.
Yeah, I think that that's absolutely critical to what you're saying, and I think that's some really good information. One thing that I think a lot of people aren't necessarily aware of when they're looking at it is you may see these larger products that come with batteries, and one thing people don't realize is there are actually some really strict regulations around battery technology, and that when you're trying to ship it, when you're trying to move it, anything like that, there's a lot that goes into that. You might assume that you're just like, hey, I ordered my new cell phone, it shows up in my door, and it's like the intricacies of that process is not really captured in just it got shipped to me. There's more that goes into it. So I think that that's actually some good information. And one thing I did want to touch on there, and Paulo, I'm going to throw this to you a little bit. So Juan Pablo was talking a little bit about suppliers, right? And that process of going through selecting suppliers, and the entirety of what the challenges that come with that are. So can you talk a little bit about from having the Aero knowledge from a procurement perspective and working with different suppliers, what are some of the challenges that you see in terms of working with suppliers, and what are some areas there are some common pitfalls that people should be aware of?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one critical for many startups up there, knowing we have different type of suppliers with different capabilities, especially if you really target to have a max production, like in the coming years or months. That has to be really tackled like in the initial phase of the device, the production. Sorry, like is that component is going to be available in the market from 5, 10 years? Is it going to be expired like next? Sometimes really, I can see many designers, many like bill of materials, they are doing like like really producing this campaign. I mean the bill of material, but turns out it's almost like the end of life. It's pretty complex in this aspect. And Aero can be really, helpful this aspect because we really have the network with our suppliers to, how the program looks like in this point. Once the NDA is there, we sign up the NDA with the campaigner. The first thing we do is really take a look at the bill of material, just for us to make sure the project is feasible. Otherwise, we cannot really certify that. And we have a specialized engineering team to make this review in the bill of material. And there we can many like a question can come up, honestly, like, is it the cheapest one? Is it the best solution? Like, is it the right supplier for this type of application? Like, are you guys consider some connectivity, some power management? And we know there's tons of suppliers out there, and having us like working together in this process can really make things easier. I also remember like one of the questions we have with Juan Pablo, it was like about the connectivity module. He was considered a certain supplier, and we have our engineering team review and the data like this RF module, and we turns out okay, we have this A and B and C type of suppliers who can do the same job even better once you go for manufacturing. And we make all the connections like Juan Pablo was talk with the suppliers, how we can escalate their device, or how they can make the implementation of this new RF module, because we know it's not just Lego. We take one piece and put another one. We know there's a lot of issues there's in terms of like firmware, and how really testing and be reliable product. This is a way how we can trust Aero for this part of the campaign. Honestly, I think we are really strong in this aspect. Our suppliers, they really believe in us. We can do this. We can help the campaigners to go for max manufacture. We have sponsors from the program. We have ADI, we have KMET, many like a strong suppliers in the market. So yeah, whatever like idea like the campaigners they have out there, if they need some engineering review or support, they can just reach out to us. We can make sure to help and suggest the best like options for your product.
Definitely. Yeah, I think I think that's excellent. I think that's kind of a lot of what we see in terms of working with campaigners is just, especially to the point that you had made, that it's not just plug and play, and that's a little bit unfortunate when you're going through the product development cycle. But I do get a lot of questions where people come to me and they say, help, something's out of stock, I can't find it, can I swap in this part? And it's like, that's not exactly how it works. You need to plan for things months in advance in that regard, and sometimes you're able to just jump in and buy a big amount of stock for it, but that future planning is one of the key components. Juan Pablo, I'm going to jump back to you here real quick, and you could answer this question as honestly as you can. What's your experience been like working with Aero in specific? What's your experience been like with the Aero certification program?
I mean, what we have gotten support on has been great. Paulo has been great, and they have been really fast responsive. For this campaign, we had a lot of experience before, so I would say that the Aero certification program and the Aero team haven't done huge for us just because we were kind of ready. But I would say that if you're starting out, rely on them more. So I think of myself and our team 3 years ago, and this would have been a huge help. And we made so much mistakes. Like Paulo was just talking about the Bluetooth or the RF module. And I was just thinking about 24th of December, 2018, I was just on the phone for 3 hours with the CEO of the company that made the modules for us, because we wanted to get from Taiwan to China on a boat, and it was a huge problem, you know? So something so silly that it, in the end, doesn't add value for the customer. The customer just wants the thing, but they don't want to understand how you made it possible, you know? And in the end, for engineering, it doesn't, like, the module is defined, but it was just something related to supply. So you can end up solving a lot of issues that you could save up if you start from scratch and get good advice. So I think that it's a huge help to have, and I think it's huge from Aero to commit this way to crowdfunders, because it's really hard. And I think it's going to be very good for a lot of different companies. In our case, Paulo mentioned a few cases, but in some cases, like I was saying, us 3 years ago, it could be 50 more things that they could have helped us with. So I think it's really valuable.
No, I really appreciate it. And I appreciate you talking a little bit about what that looked like. Honestly, between where you were 3 years ago and where you are now, I think that that's good, because I think people are going to see that implementation as they go along the journey. Obviously, you want to have that success product one, right? You want to be able to jump in product one, and then you can kind of build along as you go. And I think it's cool for people to be able to see that where you were to where you are now, and how that development of a company comes about. So real quick to those out there in chat, those who are listening, we're going to jump to Q&A here in just a few minutes. We're going to talk just about a few other things, but just a reminder, if you have any questions, to go ahead and submit them. They're down at the bottom. We're going to go ahead and jump in. I got a list that we're going to go through here in a second. But Paulo, I'm actually going to jump to you real quick. And I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about the Aero certification program, in specific, the process of what it takes for someone to go ahead and get their product certified.
Absolutely. Kitty, also, if you can share that link that I sent you, that would be great. Um, the process is really straightforward. You know, how we can get started is really easy. We have, people, they can just, or startups, they can just go from the aero.com page, and from there, they are going to see the Indiegogo tab, okay? And once that's done, once the application form is submitted, we can, our team is going to help with the legal aspect, in terms of NDA. We are going to need some information about your project beforehand, just to make sure that's a feasible project. We can see, like, okay, what kind of components you have there, the bill of material, some information about the design is much appreciated. And once it's done, especially if you're talking about some all the campaigns from Europe and some from APEC, they also come to me, especially because, like, a time zone. And what we do, once that campaign comes to me in Europe, I'm going to make this one-on-one call, as we did with Juan Pablo. And from there, what we are going to really try to understand where the campaigner is in this, let's say, life cycle here. Let's consider like this, because for this question, we can understand, is it just idea at this moment? Do they have a capabilities for going to prototyping? And honestly, I really think, and I really like when I read between the option 2, prototyping, and product launch. That's the aspect where Aero can be really decisive, how we can minimize the cost of the bill of material and the component selection. We can, different type of options in the bill of material. Really, that's a crucial part. And I really like when you're at this stage, because we can coordinate also with different activities. Meaning, we can integrate the Indiegogo marketing team on board, to make some suggestions from the campaigner. When is a good time to launch the campaign? How's the marketing going? How's the email list going? We can combine marketing also with a product launch. Once the products launch in the, what I meant to say, the Indiegogo platform, then we can be also work together in the next step when I talk about full production. Of course, we're expecting the campaign was successful, and they're really ready to go for max production or manufacturing services. This is another aspect where Aero can be really decisive as well. We have a bunch of options across like Europe. We have our engineering directors really supporting the program. Our FIs in the field are supporting the customers as well. So these are like some aspects we really like when someone's really between prototyping, product launch, and full production, because we can be decisive in how we can like make things easier from the campaigners. And I think that's it from my side. Is like how to get done. Just for the submit form, if you can do this, Keaton, it's very simple. We can go to aero.com page where we can see the get started, and we simply start to fill out this form, and that's it. From there, we have a team to support you. We have a marketing team, we have an engineering team, and we can make all the connection as possible for you to go for full production. That's our target.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much, Paulo. Okay, so here in just a second, I'm actually going to just jump into the Q&A. So let's go ahead and let's hit some information here real quick. So a couple of questions I can hit right off the bat. Andrew's asking, will presentation materials be sent to the delegates? So we will be, this is a recording. We're going to be sending an information out after the webinar, the fireside chat to everyone. So look for that as an email following up to this regarding it. That'll have kind of a copy of what we've kind of been going. You'll be able to rewatch this and see what's going on there. Juan Pablo, I'm going to go ahead and ask a question for you. So this one comes from Desmond. He was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your OEM program.
Well, so we currently have a partnership with Loaded Boards for the skateboards. So we supply the powertrain to them so they can, Loaded Boards is a traditional longboard brand, one of the biggest in the world. They have these amazing longboards and amazing wheels. And when we started talking, they needed and they wanted an electric powertrain that went with their philosophy of what skating is and all that. And we coped very well with them. And we're now looking for similar partnerships on the bike side, right? Mm-hmm. We have this kit and we are going direct to customers for people that love their bike and they want to customize their bike and want to make it electric because they love it, because they spend a lot of money on it, because they think it works. Why throw it away? There are many reasons why people get the kit, but we are open to relationships with OEM. So if you're on OEM, just reach out because we are talking with 5 or something.
Excellent, perfect. And then I'll go ahead
and just to complete the question, in the kit you're seeing a kit, so it basically is a battery that can be installed from the outside very quickly, which is convenient for many suppliers, many OEMs, because they don't have to change their supply chain. They can just attach the kit at the end. Maybe they make the bike in Taiwan, but they can attach the kit here in Europe, for example. That's a very good value added for some OEMs, but other OEMs prefer like integrated battery and stuff like that. We can do that. We have done that before. And like I said before, like the core value here is in the electronics and the user experience, not so much on how it looks or how it is installed. So for OEMs, we're open to that too. So just reach out.
Perfect. Okay, I'm going to touch a little bit on a couple questions we're getting here. One of the questions that we've received is, how does Aero make money through this? And I think that's a good question. So Aero is a distributor of electronic components. So we end up stocking a lot of different suppliers that different companies are going to end up working for. And so we are going to hold inventory for the components that someone's looking to do for a production run. And that's essentially where we make our money, is off of components. So a lot of times we get the question about, hey, for the Aero certification program, what's the fee for this? How much does it cost? That kind of thing. And the answer is actually zero. The goal there is that we want to be your partner through this process, that will help you with, as you go through your selections. We want to be a part of that and to work with you on things so that in the longer term, term, when you're thinking about, hey, where would I like to buy those components, that Aero is really your first choice and distributor from that front. So I did just want to touch on that. I saw that question. I thought that was a good one. And then one other one was, someone was asking about how do we get support from the Aero certification program in Europe. So Paulo was talking a little bit about that process and how you apply. I'll be retouching on the link here in a second, but essentially if you go through and apply to the program, that's where you're going to be able to get in touch with somebody. If you're in, it's judged and it's worked locational regionally. So when we find out where someone's located, that's when we connect you to the right partner. So in the circumstance that you're talking about, if you're working with someone, if you're within the European market, you'll be able to apply to the program, and we'll get you in touch with Paulo as fast as we can. He's a busy guy, so we'll make sure we get over to that. Juan Pablo, I'm gonna do the next one to you real quick. Someone was asking here a little bit about how did Unlimited deal with pilot runs for engineering / design verification and pre-production runs. They were thinking that it seems to be a step that's been missed by many. So can you just talk a little bit about that?
So let me see if I got the question right. Like, how did we go through the process of like the engineering challenges, or
just
sorry,
the initial kind of
sure.
pilot runs, like when you're doing the development, when you're doing it, did you guys do any like first production runs, or how did you handle the pre-production process?
Yeah. That is really dependent on who your supplier is and what they advise, right? And what are you producing? For example, batteries, what are the risks, basically? If you're producing something that is very riskless, so a sensor, a temperature sensor, yeah, it doesn't matter if the first runs fail or whatever, every now and then. But if you're producing a battery that can put a house on fire, you have to be very strict with not only the design, but actually the production and how everything is verified. So what we did was like trial runs, 30 units, for example, back in 2018 when we did our first production runs. We did trial runs, so I was there physically sleeping in the factories in Asia, seeing the product being built by hand by myself and with a couple of guys. Like we always try to travel in pairs, but not always. And you're seeing stuff happen. And if you design the product and if you really know the product, you're gonna see a lot of stuff. Like, and it's not gonna be always good news. It's actually the opposite. So there, we were solving problems. We were calling back our team here to make firmware changes or design changes or sourcing. We even saw, when we saw the components, one of the components electronic on hand, there was like a part number mistake, and it was like, oh no, 700 components. What do we do? We are like producing tomorrow. So those types of things may happen depending on who your supplier is and whatever. So trial runs, 30 units, 100 units. It really depends also. The size of the trial run will really depend on the size of the final run that you want to do. For some people, 300 units is nothing. For us, 300 units was half of the batch that we were making in the end. So trial runs basically by hand, just to verify that you know everything is okay, and also the people that are going to build it, when they are going to build 60 per hour, they understand the product, they understand what the implications of putting a screw in the wrong way or whatever. And then you do a production run a little bit faster, depending on your supplier. They can feel comfortable by doing 100 or whatever, simulating what they will pump out at max speed. And then there you will find other issues, right? You find bottlenecks, you find issues. Sometimes production issues can be related to functionality issues, and those are the ones that you want to find. And then in the end, hopefully you're still there in Asia and the trip is not so long that you can get to see like the full production in full speed. So to give you some numbers, like the first production that we did in 2018, it was very slow, so maybe I don't know, 10 batteries per hour or something like that. And in 2019, when we did 4,000 batteries and we were much more prepared and we did things a lot better, we were pumping out 60 or 70 batteries per hour. And that's just for the batteries, and I can't remember those numbers, so this is why I bring them up. But in the end, you have to be, it's very logical, the process, and you have to make sure that it's going to be fine when you start pumping them out, because then the cost gets crazy if you have to rework stuff. So basically, you have to make sure that when it's coming out, it's basically going into packaging, and you have put in place all the controls, which can vary depending on the product.
Perfect. Yes, thank you very much. So Paulo, I'm gonna jump to you real quick, and I know we're getting close to time here, so just a few more questions that we're gonna touch on. Paulo, I was wondering if you could just talk a little bit about what's some of your advice for entrepreneurs, for future campaigners, people, if you have anything that you'd like to give advice from them.
Yeah, so what is the most important advice, as Juan Pablo said, also understand what's the question they want to solve, what kind of product they want to launch in the market, and who are your competitors. I think that's a one initial question. It's not just launch by the sake of launch. I believe those who are trying to make a product in the market, they want to solve a problem, right? It's the same once you really buy a phone or different technology you put in your house, or a e-bike, for instance. It's something new that there's a demand, and we know there's like a potential to be escalated in the future. And also you have to love it. You have to have the background and some understanding of what you're talking about, because it's a commitment. It's really a commitment in terms of how drastically your life is going to change after that. Be willing to make connections, be willing to talk with people, be willing to talk with different suppliers, really open to discuss and see how we can increase, improve your idea, and how you can make it as better as possible. This is a long process. I would say it really changed your mindset. I believe Juan Pablo really said he just shift for the traditional job to have his own company. And that's really a shift in the process. What I would say is really be willing to talk with people and try to be as open as possible for advice and people who have some experience in the field. I would say that's the most important aspect.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Okay, so I do know that we're going to come up here close very fast to the end of this. So I do want to cover just a few more things real quick. So Juan Pablo, can you talk a little bit about what's next for Unlimited eBike?
Good question. Like I was saying before, we're developing a platform. How we see it is a platform. Even maybe in the future, a platform that other companies go through and work on. Like they make stuff that works with our platform. We're not planning on making helmets, but who knows in the future when everything is connected and there are smart helmets. The helmets communicate with our platform because our platform is out there in a lot of vehicles. So how we're seeing it is we're making a platform from light electric vehicles. Our platform contains the whole end-to-end solution for a manufacturer or a person, right? It contains the motor, batteries, motor controllers, but also the app, the cloud, so that the whole experience can be controlled end-to-end. And that's how we see it. So the natural flow of that, after I tell you this and I tell you we have 2 vehicles, the natural flow of that is to grow the number of applications of the platform, to bring more people onto the platform, be it OEMs or be it customers, end customers, or manufacturers, or so that the platform can grow the types of vehicles, but also grow in the end, make a bigger impact in the world, basically. And that's the way we're going about it.
Perfect. That's awesome. Okay, so I'm gonna hit just a few quick questions here to try to knock out some of the questions that are here in the chat. Someone was asking if they can use the Aero program for making board games. We are definitely open to any and all ideas that have. One thing that we kind of require in terms of part of the qualification process is we like to work typically with electronic components. That's kind of our bread and butter. We are always welcome to apply to the program, and we'll reach out and just kind of let you know if we may not have the expertise in that area, but we'll keep you let you know if there's a better way to go in doing so. We definitely know that obviously when we're working with our partner Indiegogo, they see a broad variety that may go outside of Aero's technical expertise. So even if you're applying and it may not be a specific fit for us, we'll still make sure that you get connected from that front. And then one other one that I wanted to touch on real quick was someone was asking a little bit about what's Medtech look like. One of my pieces of advice is if you have any questions regarding it, if you want to just apply into the program, typically that's our way of being able to have more of a one-on-one conversation that is a little bit more longer form. I love being able to do things in this venue, but I do recognize that an hour is just really not enough time when it comes to being able to look at the entirety of someone's development on a project. I mean, obviously, when we were talking with Juan Pablo there, he's looking at 3 years of multiple product developments and lines and such. So my advice would just be, if you get a chance to go ahead and apply for the program, it'll be an opportunity to talk with people like myself and Pablo regarding what, excuse me, Paulo, regarding what is going on with the industry, and see where we can try to help you from that front. So, okay, I think I got time for about 2 more questions. So I'm going to go ahead and start with Juan Pablo. Tell me a little bit about, I know people are going to be asking, where can I get the product, and how am I able to buy this? Where should we be driving people?
Right now, we are still on Indiegogo on demand, so you can go in there, you see the prices really easily at the right, and then just understand the product pretty easily. I think you can always reach out to us, and we can point you to the right way. Very soon, we will be launching our new website for this new product, and also include the skateboard product. So a new website for the Unlimited brand, that the customer can see that we make different vehicles and that everything is like the same language and stuff like that. But currently, just if you go to the Indiegogo campaign, you can buy the product there.
Definitely. And one thing that some people were asking was just compared to other crowdfunding platforms, you know, how was one thing that an Indiegogo can help with, and that is an area they can help with, the in-demand capability to be able to go ahead. Again, we recognize that not everyone's going to start with an e-commerce platform like Amazon, right? So having the option to be able to leave it up there is a good way to be able to connect. Paulo, real quick, can you touch a little bit on applying for the Aero certification program again?
Yeah, absolutely. The process, as I said, is pretty like straightforward. You can simply go to our page, aero.com, and we have this application form there. And once it's there, I think that's the best approach for us to get in contact with you. I think that's the best way for us to understand your project, how you might need our support, and how we can better tackle the difficulties you may have. It can be even like how we can help you to outsource part of your project. Let's consider you don't have the skills in house. You need someone to help with the app, for instance. You can use our Aero Plus platform. You can try to make sure you can use our resources, skills. You have like a bunch of options. And yeah, I would suggest get started, make the application there. If that's needed, we can have a one-on-one call. Okay, I think that would be the best.
Perfect. Yeah, so just as a reminder, you can go to aero.com and click on the Indiegogo button to get started. You can also go to the Indiegogo page, which is enterprise.indiegogo.com/aero, and you can get some more information there. So I know we're getting ready to finish and wrap up here. Juan Pablo, any final comments from you?
Thank you. It's been a great chat, and hope to stay in touch. Excellent. If any of you wants to reach out, I'm available, LinkedIn or the normal channels. I'm sure you can find me, and we can chat more. Perfect.
And I just, from my end, I just have really, it's been a delight getting to work and talk with everyone here. We really appreciate everyone's time. I know I didn't get a chance to hit all the questions. Like I said, I wish I could make this 4 hours, but unfortunately that would get a little bit lengthy. So we want to be respectful of people's time. So with that, I'm actually going to get ready to go ahead and close the fireside chat. We thank everyone so much for coming. Look forward to getting to see you again, and we'll talk to you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.